Hello and welcome to Give and Toke, the show that elevates the conversation about cannabis to a higher level. I'm your host Paul, and today we welcome Matthew Dent, who is the Director of Cultivation at Wangara Cultivation Co. With a boutique indoor grow operation in Queensland, their mission is to produce craft quality cannabis for Australia's local market with a focus on terpenes and the wider entourage effect. If you like what you hear on today's show, be sure to subscribe, follow and like on your podcast platform of choice. And if you use Apple and Spotify, a 5-star rating goes a long way to helping this show get to more ears. To stay in touch, check us out at Give and Toke on Instagram or email us at giveandtoke@gmail.com. You can also find our range of merch online at giveandtoke.com.au. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with Matthew Dent. Matthew Dent, welcome to the show.
Paul, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, your LinkedIn tagline is Fire First Mentality. What is fire when it comes to cannabis?
Good question to roll out with. I think for me, fire is a combination of all of the main characteristics. So it's the quan, so to speak. It's the visual appeal, the flavor, the smell profile. And I say smell profile because it's a combination of terps, esters, styles, everything that makes that bud what it is. And then obviously effect plays a big part as well. So for me, it's the whole package.
It's kind of a shame, we're obviously in a medicinal market, but many of us, have gone around the world and tried different things. We've had some fun with cannabis. One of the biggest things is being able to smell it. If you like the smell of it, you're probably going to like the smoke of it. And this is one of the tough parts of a medicinal space is, you don't really know what it smells like till you've paid $160 for that jar.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think, there's a lot of disappointment that comes along with that, but it's like opening that fresh pack of basketball cards or Pokemon or whatever it was when you're a kid where you're not sure what you're going to get. It's that Christmas style anticipation, what's under the tree. For me, circling back to fire first, it's about smokes like it smells as well. So for me, that smells about priming your senses and getting you ready for that experience. And if the smoke delivers more of that profile, then to me, as a grower, you've done a good job.
Now, you have a resume that features burst in automotive, time with our friends of the show at Green Farmers, to today where you're the Director of Cultivation at Wangara Cultivation Co. Tell us about how you went from auto parts to cannabis.
Yeah, sure. So managed auto parts stores for a good part of my working career and love working for that company. It's a bit of a down to earth role. You're dealing with mechanics all day who are blue collar guys that perform a really important role in society, keeping everyone moving. In that role, I learned a lot about customer service and I focused a lot on management and developing myself as a leader. And from there, I kind of had this, I won't call it a midlife crisis, but I had a Sasha LaForgia style epiphany where I was like, you know what, I want to do something that works a little bit more towards making the world a better place. And so I've always been passionate about cannabis and thought, well, I'll try to do something that leads more into horticulture and growing. And yeah, was lucky enough to get a job at a place called Royal Brinkman, which is a Dutch horticulture supplier. They work with a lot of Australia's leading farms and also on a global scale, really the best horticulture minds in the world. So I was lucky to get in there and learn from them. And that led me into Green Farmers, where I had a really exciting few months there. But really, my goal was to build my own facility. And Green Farmers do an amazing job with the greenhouse side of growing. But my passion has always been indoor and really targeting, the 99th percentile of what can be achieved with the plant. So, yeah, straight away started working very hard with co-founders of the business, Ethan Shields and Luke Nugent. And yeah, together we created this facility.
Very cool. And I'm glad that you name-checked Sasha there, who, is a friend of the show and mentioned you in our last episode, and that's how we've connected here. So it is an interesting kind of, mid or third or quarter life crisis where you just kind of go, what am I doing? Where do I want to be? And it's a funny theme for a lot of people where it's kind of like, how do I make this world a better place? And I'm going to go and do it with something that, through our teen years was kind of scolded as being really bad for you. So it's awesome that you could kind of push through that stigma, figure out, hey, I want to do something else with life and, get experience in other spaces, but ultimately come to your own kind of organization and operation. So that's really cool. You mentioned some of the transferable skills like customer service management, bettering yourself. People constantly ask me how to get into this industry. And to me, it seems kind of a hobbled mess of transferable skills and passions. So, what advice would you give to people wanting to get into this space? Because I don't think there's a straightforward path, and you've clearly forged your own. So, what would you tell someone who's coming to you saying, hey, man, how do I do this?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think put the plants first and try to understand where you think your skill set and what you bring to the table will work within the industry. So for our business, we were really careful to recruit people that bring something different to the table. So put us all together and we get that Voltron effect for older audiences and Power Ranger effect for slightly younger audiences. So, we've got staff that are amazing growers. Ben Foster's probably, yeah, one of the best growers I know. But also we've got people like Steve around him who bring structure and tracking and traceability to the operation. So we've brought in people from different areas. We've made sure that everyone comes together to create a well-rounded team. So yeah, my advice to anyone out there is just work on what your strengths are. Don't try to force yourself into a round hole if you're a square peg. The industry needs everyone. So, yeah, I think the best thing to do is just focus on your strengths.
I really like that you celebrate multiple people in an answer like that. Understanding, or certainly one of the themes that I hear in this show is that ego needs to be put aside. We need to work with others. We need to collaborate with others. We need to work on the strengths of others. So that always kind of stands out to me when someone very early on can go, my success is in part because of all the other people I work around. And that's something that I think kind of can be missing from people that ask me the question. They want to show that they're the best at something. They want to show that they can prove themselves. But actually, you kind of need to be part of a team, and you need to be willing to constantly sacrifice, constantly learn new things, make mistakes, move past them. So I'm just really glad there that you're able to celebrate the other people that are part of the journey with you.
Yeah, look, it takes a village. It's like raising a child, right? It takes a village and everyone has to all be humming and doing their best to get the best out of the plant. We also respect Mother Gunja and we give thanks to Mother Gunja on a regular basis. So we understand that we're really lucky to be custodians of that plant and perform an amazing role in the chain of getting it out to patients and helping them get the benefits. So, kudos to everyone in the supply chain, right from the cultivators through to the pharmacists and doctors that are helping patients. It's something beautiful, and yeah, we all should work as a team, and we all should work together for the outcome.
Very much so. Moving from the collective to more of the personal self, what is your relationship with cannabis? Was there a significant time where you discovered its benefits? Do you have a historical relationship that's different to now? Where does it sit in your life?
Yeah, look, I was probably self-medicating from an earlier age than what science now says that you should. I was sort of a very I think, without sounding too bullish, I was a pretty bright kid, but at the same time, the mind was always racing 1,000 miles an hour, and I was always getting ahead of myself. And I found, like the kid off the Fast and Furious who says, cars kind of chill me out. I think
Yeah.
cannabis generally chills me out, not just having it, but also genetics and all of the nuances and learning and talking about it is something that kind of I've felt has calmed me down and brought structure to my life. So yeah, I guess my relationship with cannabis started early, and then over the years I've sort of looked at it as a mountain I wanted to climb to kind of become one of the best at what I do. So I believe in having goals and dreams and that kind of thing. So that's always been a goal of mine to just help as many patients as I can with the best product I can, and that's kind of what's taken me on this journey.
Great references so far. You know, we're only a few minutes in, and you're rocking a Nirvana t-shirt. You've referenced Voltron and Power Rangers and Fast and Furious, so I can tell we're going to get along fine.
Yeah, I'm a child of the '80s, man, and it's cool, I think, to be a kid in some respects and embrace where you came from. So, yeah, it's all the 40 somethings out there. We still got it, baby.
Well, yeah, I'm 1989, so I just squeezed in, but I'm going to, say that
Oh,
we're in this
nice.
together.
Yeah, you're an '80s kid, mate. I love
Only
it.
just, only just. I'm wondering whether around the world or here in Australia, what's getting you really excited about cannabis at the moment?
I think, coming out of what would have been now 90 years of this cloud that cannabis has been under for what I think are probably bogus reasons. I'm really excited about the science that's now being applied, the technology that's coming along with it. Obviously, all of the medical research that people like Dedi Miri and stuff like that are doing in the space. I think, yeah, cannabis is in the last 20 years obviously flourished under legalization. I'm a bit of a cannabis nerd and a bit of a genetics nerd, so I'm really loving the flavors and tastes and where they're able to take the plant to now. It's crazy. And I guess, that's catching up to other mainstream horticulture products like, don't quote me on any of this, but I think carrots used to be purple and, lettuce may not have looked like it does now. And I think we're starting to be able to manipulate cannabis in the same way. And to me, that's really cool and exciting. And, the flavors that are coming out now. So as a kid growing up, it was like, oh, this one's got a skunky smell to it, and oh, it must be Northern Lights. And, if you were lucky, some White Widow would come around. And now we've just got this amazing broad range of flavors, taste, the visuals. We grow some buds that look like little diamonds and smell like diesel dipped in marmalade and give you this beautiful effect that comes along with it. And I love it. I'm like a kid in a candy store. So yeah, I think the most exciting thing for me is definitely the advances in genetics. We've now got triploid seeds coming through with modification, not genetic modification, but just I think modification to the way the trichomes present and stuff like that. So all of that stuff's really exciting to me, and yeah, I'm just nerding out on it, man. I love it.
I can see the little sparkle in your eye as you start to talk about how much genetics excite you. I've
Yeah.
said it 100 times on this pod, but it's a shame it's not a video podcast, so people can't see that joy there. But it is super exciting. There are so many classic cultivars. There are so, like, you mentioned White Widow there. You mentioned the skunky things, the cheesy things from kind of back in the day. But now we've got all this fun stuff coming from, California candies and all the really diesely things. So, and this kind of reverts back to the top of the show where it's like, as much as we love this medicinal space, there's a lot of fun to be had here and a lot of joy. And that's where it's great to kind of explore these different flavor profiles.
Yeah, definitely. And to me, it comes back to patient experience, and not everyone loves one flavor profile. There's different horses for courses. So the variety, I think, to me is really important. It's important for a patient to, be able to access what resonates with them and what primes their senses for a good experience. So if we can get that range out there and get things for patients that work with them, then fantastic. And I get to nerd out at the same time.
Well, I think that's a great segue for us to talk about Wangara Cultivation Co. You're a B2B boutique indoor operation with the mission to produce quality right here on Australian shores. So tell me about Wangara and, what your why is.
Yeah, cool for sure. So Wangara is actually an Indigenous Australian word for flower. And we have one of our co-founders who's an Indigenous Aussie, which we're really proud of. And so, being a Queensland-based company, we really wanted to embrace that heritage and give ourselves a name that represents us, representing Aussies and being Australian, which we're extremely proud of. It's not easy to get a farm up and running in Australia. I would dare say it's a lot easier to get a farm up and running in Thailand or Portugal or somewhere else. So it's been a bit of a journey getting here, and we're extremely proud of where we're at. We are focused on producing a boutique style product. It is medicine, so we respect that and make sure that we operate with all of the correct protocols. but also we're having fun really pushing the plant to its limits and getting the absolute maximum out of it. So, yeah, Wangara is all about this amazing team of really passionate cultivators that want to tap into the best genetics the world has to offer and give Aussies the freshest possible product we can. So, our why, and we talk about it regularly, is just getting the best out of the plants we can. So we go in every day just trying to grow fire, man, just trying to get the dankiest dank out there and then get it in front of patients.
Very cool. Now, you moved from Victoria to Queensland. What was the motivation for that move? Does Queensland have something that Victoria doesn't when it comes to operating in this space? And that's not a loaded question as a Victorian. I'm genuinely curious if there's something else going on up there that kind of makes it easier or different to operate.
Look, man, it's a good question. It's pretty interesting. I'll tell you why at the end, but I'll start it by just saying it's interesting to me that there is kind of this little bit of a hub, and I wouldn't say it necessarily is just Queensland, but I'd sort of say from maybe Northern Rivers upwards, you do kind of have this hub, and cannabis has kind of generated to this area. So there's, a lot of farms I know that are up the coast here, from Northern Rivers right up to Yandina Way. So I think for me, yeah, there is a kind of a cool little cannabis hub going on in Queensland. I don't know if that's the laid back attitude of people. Certainly not the weather, because if you put a farm up here, you're up against it. To anyone listening, probably avoid putting a greenhouse above Sydney, I would say personally. But yeah, so it's hot and humid up here all the time, which is not really what you want as a cultivator. But there is this cool little hub up here, and it's kind of a happening space. The reason I moved up here was because Ethan and Luke, co-founders of the business, are from this area, and the land we had to build on, which is very important to getting things going, was here. So I grabbed my little family, my wife and two kids. Shout out to Kim, Charlie, and Sienna. You are my world, and thank you for supporting me on this journey. I can't give them enough thanks, and I'm so proud of them for coming up and starting a new life up here. So yeah, we come up for the farm basically.
Very cool. And yeah, shout out to Kim, Charlie, and Sienna. This kind of lifestyle, this kind of commitment to this work does require sacrifice from you, but often one of the understated elements is the support of the family. Almost everyone I speak to or everyone I've spoken to has made a sacrifice. And in tow, there's been a family, a partner, kids, relationships that have been affected by this. So it is a big shout out to them because they're supporting you doing something you love. And I think that can be a really understated part of this space. So mad credit to them.
Thanks.
You mentioned that you are, a genetics nerd, and I'd love to know kind of what your process is in selecting the right cultivars to grow and kind of what factors influence this choice.
Good question again. I think for me, I kind of want to grow what I want to smoke, really. So the selection process really does start by looking at a genetic, looking at its lineage. So to explain that a little bit more for the listeners that don't know, you look at a lot of these new genetics and you go, oh, what about the white widows and the skunks and the OGs and this kind of stuff? And the cool thing with genetics is that if you look back through the lineage of some of this really new stuff that you might not understand the name of or know much about, you'll see that it has a family tree. And these cool legendary strains have been bred into them, similar to racehorses and I guess other, elite animals, where you're bringing the best characteristics from some of these legendary genetics and then splicing them in over the journey of the plant. So don't be afraid of the new stuff, because a lot of the times it's made up of some of that really cool legendary stuff. So for me, the selection process just starts with looking at that lineage, making sure it's got stuff in it that I like and that I want to grow. And then the pheno hunt begins, or the growing out begins, because a very important next phase of that process is making sure that it's suited to your facility. So a lot of people will say, "Hey, I want this shining silver haze or something like that." The reality is that genetic might have been native to the Hindu Kush Mountains or something like that. Might grow to 11 feet tall and take 14 weeks to flower. And in reality, for our little indoor facility, it's just not viable. So yeah, the key components are making sure you want to actually smoke it and it's something that you feel would be medically beneficial, but then also making sure that it fits into your scenario so you can get the best out of it.
I'm curious if that, we know that these designations of indica and sativa are outdated, but they still play somewhat of a role, particularly to a new market. Is that one of the reasons why we see far more kind of quote unquote indicas on the market because of the time in which they take to grow? Like, my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that your quote unquote sativas do take more resources, more time, and more energy. Therefore, from a business perspective, probably aren't as viable as the indicas. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, I think so. I think to me, the term indica sativa is only outdated when people stop talking about it. I know that people put their argument forward and say, well, you look back at the genetics of the plant and for whatever reason, it's outdated or it's obsolete. But to me, if people are still discussing it and using it as a descriptor now, then they should do so comfortably. The meaning behind it doesn't have to be the exact scientific meaning. To me, what we're trying to basically say is, does it couch lock you or does it allow you to hold a conversation and get things done? Or does it zone you out and potentially take you away from things for a little bit or make you think about cake for an hour? So yeah, to me, it doesn't really matter why. I think, though, in terms of cultivating, basically everything's been hybridized these days. So I like to talk more about indica leaners, sativa leaners, or balanced. And yeah, we're kind of, I guess, really trying to drill into what effect is it going to give you. There's also characteristics of the plant and how it's cultivated that'll play a part. But yeah, for the end consumer and the patients, it's definitely about just giving them an idea and understanding of what to expect from the product, so there's no surprises, I guess.
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I did a cannabis sommelier course at the University of British Columbia
Awesome.
when I started being a bud tender. And I remember coming out of that course and telling my wife, I'm like, we're never using indica and sativa again. These phrases are gone. And then I realized, well, there still isn't anything really to replace them with. So they do still serve a significant purpose. Here we are 5 years later. That was the Canadian market that's absolutely still being used there. In the Australian medicinal market, these phrases are being used. And we know that, yeah, while they might not be scientifically accurate, they provide a really good baseline and culturally and historically, do really serve a purpose. So it's actually nice to hear someone come to the defense of those phrases in a way because they are still very useful.
Mate, there's no place for snobbery in cannabis, I don't think. And at the end of the day, I've always throughout my career believed the customer's always right. And so if someone's talking about cannabis in those terms and it's easy for them to differentiate, then we should embrace it and roll with it. Yes, scientifically it may not have, the exact meaning, but I guess that's why we have an urban dictionary. So yeah, we'll stick it in the urban dictionary section and we're good.
I like it. I like it. What's the most difficult aspect of cannabis cultivation that people wouldn't expect? You've alluded to a couple of challenges already, like humidity and temperature and things like that. What really kind of catches people off guard?
I think if you look at it from an amateur perspective, overwatering. People are generally nurturers and feeders, and when something's not going right, your first thing you try to do is feed it or give it something. Um, we always look at in our facility the most important factors and work backwards from that. So for me, the biggest challenge is definitely getting your light and climate right, and the two work hand in hand. So, yeah, the advice to anyone out there starting a facility or planning to get going would be to ensure that you're able to provide those plants the right environment. And that kind of circles back or references my point I made before about building a greenhouse above Sydney. I'm not saying it can't be done and no shade on those doing it, but just try to give yourself the best chance when you're planning because it's will allow you more time and energy to focus on some of the other issues that pop up.
To date, what have been your proudest achievements, either in the industry in general or specifically within this operation at Wangara? What kind of gets you out of bed each day and what is it that's kind of made you go, wow, we're doing this?
Yeah, I think the proudest achievement I have so far is just and it's shared with the co-founders of the business, obviously. But the proudest achievement is definitely the team that we've put together and the way that we've got each other's backs and the way that we're able to work together through adversity. Everyone covers each other and goes the extra mile, and we just have such a bloody great crew, and we're all able to have a beer together and chill at the end of it. But yeah, we're all very passionate and 100%. Like, we built a pretty nifty little facility, and we're pushing out some dank, so we're really proud of that. But couldn't be done without the team we have. So yeah, mad props to them.
Without giving away the secret sauce, what is it that makes the Wangara facility so unique and so special to you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's culture. There's just a very cool guy rocked up the other day, and he was wearing a T-shirt that said, "There's no SOP for culture," and to me, that really resonated. I think for me, our biggest strength and our biggest weapon is our team. We've got a really, really gun tight knit team, all focused on producing the best possible medicine we can. And for me, it's no secret. Having said that, there's nothing we do that you couldn't already see on Canna Cribs. If you watched a season of that and listen to what they're saying and what they're doing, we're not doing much different. We're taking our lead from the BC craft market and the Cali craft market, Colorado, all of those cool spots in the US where they're rolling out really cool dank using the best technology. What we're rolling with. So yeah, no actual smoke and mirrors, just hard work, dedication.
Sometimes the best lessons are the hardest. What have been some of the operational challenges for the company, or even you as an individual, that have taught you a lesson, or forced you to diverge and go elsewhere?
I think some of the early lessons we've learned are never take anything for granted. If you aren't experiencing a specific issue now, doesn't mean you won't in the near future. So it's probably best to prepare for everything. Fortune favors the prepared mind, as they say. So basically, you're on a roller coaster, and this plant will push you to your limits and challenge you to your core. So be ready for everything, baby. That's probably where I sit.
I love it. Well, Matt, we're going to pause our cannabis conversation for a moment so we can have some fun and learn something new with our quiz. You've got a little bit of an interest in the weird and wonderful, so this is going to be a short quiz about UFOs and aliens. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, wicked, man. I originally suggested cricket, but I thought that might put a few listeners to sleep. So I think this subject's really cool, man. So looking forward to these questions.
A couple of cricket tragics here. We might have indeed bored the listener. So yeah, it's good that we've gone a little bit more left field with this one. There are 6 questions here, all multiple choice. Let's do this.
Okay.
Question 1. What is the study of UFOs called? Is it ufology, astrobiology, or spaceology?
Let's lock in one, please, Eddie. It's ufology.
That is correct. It is ufology, the study of unidentified flying objects. You're 1 from 1.
Awesome. Let's go.
Which famous punk rocker has dedicated much of their adult life to the research of aliens and UFOs through their research organization To the Stars? Is it Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day, Dexter Holland of The Offspring, or Tom DeLonge of Blink-182?
Tom DeLonge.
That is correct.
That is correct. You go way back to the song Aliens Exist, and here he is now, legitimately on the research path for UFOs. I assume you've kept a bit of an eye on what he's been doing?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it blows my mind. Like, I can't get my head around it. But yeah, what a shift. I know that dude from The Offspring was a brain surgeon or something.
Yeah, he's very educated.
But Tom DeLonge, I think, trumped him on this one. So
definitely
very cool.
The guy who spent most of his younger years talking about dicks is now doing very well talking about aliens.
Nothing against dick and ball jokes. I'm a big fan, but at the same time, he's shifted gears pretty hard there, man.
Big time. All right, 2 from 2. Question 3. What secret base is said to house alien spacecraft and alien bodies? Is it Area 51, Grissom Air Force Base, or Johnson Space Center?
Area 51.
That is correct.
Question 4. Which 1990s cult famously committed mass suicide believing that an alien spacecraft hidden by a comet was coming to Earth to collect them so they could enter into a higher existence? Was it the People's Temple, aka Jonestown, Heaven's Gate, or the Branch Davidians?
Okay, that is an absolute fireball you've delivered right there. I absolutely have no idea, but I'm gonna go for number one because to me that just sounded a little bit familiar.
Denied.
Incorrect. So the hints there were that this happened in the 90s, whereas Jonestown was a little bit earlier and was more based on fear of the cult imploding, whereas the Heaven's Gate cult in the 90s, they're the ones that very famously were all wearing the matching Nikes, the purple cloth draped over them, thinking that there was a comet coming to Earth, hiding this alien spacecraft that was going to come and collect them. So they all took their Kool-Aid as, you know, as prescribed, and they believed that they were leaving their earthly bodies behind to enter into, you know, extraterrestrial beings. So RIP to the Heaven's Gate cult there. Let's hope that you are on that higher plane that you wanted. So you are still doing well here. You've got 3 from 4. This is question 5. Which planet's moon is believed to be the most likely spot to find aliens? Is it Saturn, Neptune, or Venus?
Saturn.
That is correct.
That is correct. So one of Saturn's moons, Enceladus, is considered to be a likely spot for aliens because of oceans that can be found underground and plumes of icy particles which could apparently support alien life. So I'm going to take NASA's word on that one, but a very cool idea that there could very well be aliens in our line of sight.
They could also be amongst us right now, and that's the cool thing about it, dude. I honestly don't take it too seriously, but I just think it's fun. I love the idea that everything could be not what it seems, and it still doesn't matter. It doesn't change a thing, and that to me is really cool.
Oh, as an X-Files kid from the 90s, I've just always wanted to believe. So I'm right there with you, man. I don't take it too seriously, but hey, if someone, comes to me and says it's all legit, I'll eat it up.
Yeah, 100%. And there's some cool shows out there like Graham Hancock's Ancient Civilizations on Netflix and stuff like that, and just a fun subject, and maybe another podcast idea somewhere there.
All right, you've done really well so far. This is your final question. Which famous scientist suggested that the discovery of extraterrestrial life would be one of the greatest scientific achievements in human history? Was it Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Stephen Hawking?
Look, yeah, it could definitely be either one of those. I would say it sounds like it would be something that I would say Neil deGrasse Tyson might have said something like that, but it's probably Carl Sagan.
It is Carl Sagan, unfortunately for you, but fortunately for us, we've just learned Carl Sagan was, a huge thought leader and very ahead of his time with a lot of these kind of cosmic ideas. So very much an interesting man with some very credible ideas. And as we've discussed, if this turns out to be real, I'll be very happy.
Whether it is or it isn't, mate, sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Well, Matt, you got 4 from 6. We all learnt a little bit about UFOs and aliens. Thanks so much for playing.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to head to our final topic of conversation now, which is kind of the Australian cannabis industry as a whole. The cannabis industry evolves rapidly. How do you stay informed about changes in regulations, trends, and market demands and things like that? We always talk about how important education is, but this is a very difficult industry to operate in. How do you keep abreast of everything that you need to be?
It's challenging, and I think it's important to set yourself up with a network. We personally use Mar Verde Consulting, so shout out to Kate Hall. And, not only does Kate do an amazing job of picking up the phone every time she's needed, and of course is very knowledgeable, but also puts out a pretty cool monthly newsletter as well that just sort of keeps you up to date with bits and pieces. From where we sit, we are obviously linked mainly with the Office of Drug Control. They do a great job and pretty clear with their communications. So the key is to do what you say you're going to do, because they approve you based on your SOPs and your planning and set up around security and security of the product, most importantly. So the key is to ensure that you do what you said you were going to do. and also, surround yourself with a good network of people. There's Australian Medical Cannabis Association and places like that as well, where you can stay up to date.
How do you deal with the stigma that still surrounds cannabis, especially in a professional setting? A lot of patients I speak to, don't want to talk to people about the fact they use medicinal cannabis. Well, you've staked your livelihood on this, your family's livelihood on this. Is it something you deal with? And if so, how do you deal with it?
To be honest, no. I surprisingly, growing up as a kid, cannabis was the devil. And in the area I grew up in, it was very heavily stigmatized. I'm an old school 3-1er from Noble Park, and obviously there was a lot of drug problems in that area. There's a lot of propaganda about cannabis being a gateway drug, etc. But basically, I think there was a massive shift, let's say around 2010, and for the whole time I've been involved in the professional cannabis industry, being a legal medicinal market in Australia, I've really never had anybody be negative about it, or really say anything other than fantastic. You're really out there helping people, which is cool, and you're doing something you love. I think stories that came around, and I can't put an exact time stamp on it, but when the story started coming out about Charlotte Figgy and other kids whose seizures were being stopped by CBD, and all of a sudden the realization of how important cannabis can be for appetite and pain reduction in palliative care and stuff like that. I obviously don't want to talk about the benefits of cannabis on this podcast, because it's not my role and not my job. But around that time, when some of that benefit started to become publicly aware, and I think the beauty of the internet is that the narrative can't be controlled by people with specific interests, and that's what YouTube and other platforms have definitely given the world. And around that time, everyone I've spoken to and told about it has been really supportive and cool about it, which has been amazing for me. I'm sure I do get a few sideways looks when I walk into the
Fish and chip shop, absolutely reeking of extremely terpy cannabis. And I am waiting for the day that I get pulled over and breath tested or something, and they exclaim that the car absolutely reeks of dope, and turn everything inside out, looking for what's effectively just me reeking of a giant bud.
Yeah.
But that's par for the course, man. So unfortunately, that part's unavoidable.
I know, speaking to Tom Varga from Green Farmers, he said that the employees there often face a similar issue because, when you're in that greenhouse, when it's all that sticky, dank smells, it's going to stick to you, much like, teenagers used to come home smelling like their job at KFC or McDonald's or whatever. This is slightly more problematic for dealing with the police. But I'm certainly relieved to hear that you say that you're not experiencing that stigma. And I think the more that people put themselves out there, the more that they will find that, hey, it's not so bad. I think you do just have to start saying it to people, and you realize a lot of people are okay with this now.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess looking back at LGBTQ communities and racism and other things like that have become destigmatized, and people have felt more comfortable about being themselves as time has gone by. I think that cannabis is the new normal, and everyone should embrace and accept it, along with everybody's differences.
I love that. That's really nice, and I don't think that's kind of spoken about quite often enough. I think we obviously stand on the shoulders of people that have come through this space before, but there's also people fighting other really progressive causes and other injustices that we kind of get to lean on a little bit. So that's a really great point. Now, you alluded earlier to the importance of kind of respecting the culture in this space whilst also understanding that it's a medicinal product. How do you kind of balance the demands of this being, a commercial entity whilst also maintaining its roots in community and culture?
That's a really good one, and that's something that we continue to work hard on, and we're aware of. It is important to understand that this is a medicine, and we are lucky to have been given this opportunity by the government and by the authorities, and we don't take that lightly, and we treat that with great responsibility. We, interestingly, have made the comment a couple of times that we've worked so freaking hard to get this thing going, and to get this opportunity, that the rules have to be respected and it has to be taken seriously. At the end of the day, we are producing a medication that seriously ill people in some cases do rely on. And so it is important to definitely treat that with the respect and responsibility it deserves. But that doesn't also mean that it can't be fun and it can't be enjoyable and we can't embrace the culture. As I said before, Mother Gunja's given this opportunity and we're very thankful for it, and we need to respect her as well as the people that fought so hard for her for all of those years and had to operate in the shadows and had to, bake cookies for the sick out of their houses and worry about the smells and other things that come along with it. People that have spent so many years incarcerated for a plant that helps people. Those are the people that I give respect to, and those are the people we honor when we go into work every day.
I laud the respect that you give to kind of where we've come from, but also where we are. I think that's the perfect balance. We've got to respect these rules that are in place and this framework that's in place, no matter what your beliefs and what you want. I want home grow, I want gifting, I want retail stores. But right now, we've got what we've got, and that's the framework to work in, whilst also going, we've come from somewhere, rich in culture, and hopefully we get back to that place, or we find a place for that to kind of have the pedestal that it deserves. But thank you for the respect that you give both sides of that. Thinking about the Australian industry, what are the essential growth areas? What would you really like to see, whether as a patient consumer, as a business operator, as a cultivator? Where do you think we need to go next? What have we really got to get right? And I probably don't even need to really dwell on the driving laws being a big one that people speak about. What's the next step that you see?
I would really like to see a lot more understanding from the regulators, and I will reference specifically a recent event where batteries for vapes have been outlawed and somehow grouped in with vape cartridges for nicotine, which is a ridiculous joke, and someone should be able to just use some common sense and fix that pretty quickly. And I'm sure they will, because we're talking about a lot of smart people here, and no disrespect to them personally, but little things like that are overlooked and can be rectified pretty quickly. I think we should use common sense on it. That one is a very common sense one. Isolates can be seen as being higher in THC, but I think it's really where the understanding comes into it, and understanding that an isolate is a cleaner expression of the trichome. There's no carbon, no ash, nothing that comes along with smoking it in a different fashion. And so it's important for them to understand that vape carts may be heaped in to the nicotine side of things if you don't understand things properly. But with some understanding and education and common sense, you could see that the doses are much smaller and probably more in line with what some patients require. So I just love to see education and common sense applied. And I think it's coming, and it's a new industry, and everybody's learning and everyone's getting better. So yeah, let's just iron out some of those little silly things that seem to have happened along the way and get people access to the right medicine, and stop arguing about whether it works or it doesn't, or whether it's scientifically proven or it's not. If patients are telling you it works and it's not hurting anybody, then just roll with it.
That's such a great point, and I think it's very pertinent with the times that we're facing. We've seen an open letter come from the Royal College of Australian New Zealand psychiatrists, as well as the Pharmacy Guild, saying that they want cannabis removed from SASB because of lack of evidence. And it is really concerning to see medical professionals, who have every opportunity to be patient facing and to hear the stories people are telling, to say, oh, we don't have evidence for this, we need to repeal it, rather than we need to keep looking for that evidence. We need to keep finding those stories. So, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but that's certainly something that really quite upset me in the past fortnight.
Yeah, look, I'll get a little bit political there, and we'll sass it up a little bit. Sure. I think that if you don't understand where the money for medicine comes from, and where the money for medical journals and research into how the human body works, where all of that money comes from in the industry that pushes a lot of those agendas, then go away and do your research. You could look into things like fentanyl and the Sackler family and go down the rabbit hole yourself, because I don't have all of the facts. But when I look at something like that, I think it's pretty straightforward to understand where the bread's buttered, and it's not by cannabis at the moment. So for me, I think the evidence or the proof is in the people and their experience. And so if you've got so many people saying it helps me, I benefit from this, and more importantly, it's not creating as much harm as, say, a fentanyl side effect wise, then really, what are we arguing against here? What is the actual fight? And unfortunately, to me, I think the reality is it goes back to the setup of how medicine's structured, and I think that will change slowly.
Whether it's what you believe the regulations will look like or whether it's your own utopic view of what cannabis could be, what do you think the future of regulation and legalization looks like in Australia? What are you hopeful for, or simply what are you expecting?
I think we don't need a crystal ball to see that we are probably edging towards some kind of legalized adult framed market. And I guess looking at, and again, I don't want to make any claims that will be taken out of context, but when you look at the Canadian model and the pressure that began to put on their healthcare system, I think that was a catalyst for them going adult legal. And I feel like potentially that is the same way Australia should go. I think that it is medicine, and that most people doing it are doing it for medical reasons. However, I also believe that it's been put on this earth for everybody. It's something bigger, it's something more sacred, and that you should put that choice in the hands of responsible adults, of course. Let's say over the age of 18 or 21, depending on where you are in the world. But, interestingly, when I circle back to that New Zealand referendum and how close they came
So
to
close.
legalization, I always think the argument should have been that it is not about whether you believe that cannabis should be legal or whether you believe that people should be able to go to a store and freely buy cannabis. The argument should be that it is not your choice to dictate what someone can and can't put into their body, as long as it is not harming anyone and not causing any adverse effects. Then to me, it is not your decision to choose what people can and can't do safely in private.
Well, Matt, we've come to our final segment of the show, and this is called Polls of Wisdom. And though we love the long-form conversation, we try to leave the listener with one key takeaway, dinner party fact, or even a call to action. So, Matt, what is your poll of wisdom?
Ooh, wow. Yeah, this is good. Okay. And I love the pool of wisdom. Can I just ask, can I turn to the interviewer myself and ask what are the origins of the pool of wisdom?
Look, give and toke is obviously a pun. I can't help myself with the poll of wisdom for a segment, for a pun. It's important that after this kind of hour-long conversation we have, that there's just one short, sharp thing I think about. Like every time I go to a professional learning or a conference or something, they're like, if you take away one thing from this, go and do that one thing. So the origin really comes from the, while we love this full, long, hour-long conversation, if there's one thing the listener can kind of end this with, food for thought, something to do, whatever it might be.
All right. My pool of wisdom is congratulations to everybody involved in the Australian medical cannabis industry. That's everyone from the regulators, the brands out there in the market, the prescribing doctors, the cultivators. We're all learning, we're all doing this together. But I think that everybody deep down is in it for the right reasons. And look how far we've come, baby. We're only 8 or 10 years into our journey, and we have a medicinal market in Australia that's already seen to be one of the best in the world. And so we should celebrate that. Let's not get caught up in the little shit here and there. Let's just understand and appreciate where we are and look forward to the future, guys, because there's big things coming, and buy weed from Aussies.
Hell yeah, so much there, and I couldn't agree with you more. Buy weed from Aussies, celebrate what we have rather than what we don't have, and keep on working towards those next steps. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you. Thank you to Kim, Charlie, and Sienna for letting me loan you this morning. Thank you to everyone that you're working with, everyone that you shouted out. I really appreciate your respect for the rules that are in place, but also the culture that has preceded us. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I appreciate you, Paul, and great work with the podcast. Please keep up the good work. I think you're doing such an amazing thing, and you're a big part of that kudos I just gave as well.
Thanks so much, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, Paul.